Did you see? We're making progress.
And Mike's in Michigan, right?
Yeah. Be there till, okay, I'll put them all here.
You like, okay.
Yes, we're live now.
Huh?
Drew's only 4 wins away.
And he's gonna be in prison with
Fire.
fires.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to open it?
He's-
Okay, we're gonna start the meeting now. First order of business is the oath of office for the Redevelopment Commission. And before we do that, we'll do the pledge first. Yeah.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before you sit down, let's go ahead and read the oath. All of us together, and then I'll say your names. Is that good enough? Okay. So you raise your right hand, and I have Tim Richardson, Richard Craig, Tom Saunders, Cindy Spade, and Justin Thompson to repeat after me. The County of Henry,
The County of Henry,
I understand, do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and I will faithfully,
and I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and diligently discharge
and diligently discharge
the duties of the office of
The duties of
the
the
office
office.
the Redevelopment Commission
the Redevelopment Commission
according to the law and to the best of my abilities.
according to the law and to the best of my ability.
All right, thank you very much. And then I'll have you guys sign it, each one of these, before we leave, and then I'll sign off on them. Thank you. Now I don't know what to do. So it's all yours, Russell.
You really come in strong.
Yeah, I can walk through, all of you, I put together a sample kind of just agenda, more of an organization meeting kind of agenda and the next steps. So other items just to kind of work through is need to get bonding in place. We talked about that a little bit before the meeting started. That is a $15,000 requirement for each of you in this capacity. That is a requirement of the statute. So please work to get that accomplished. And that will be an annual obligation, so typically they're done just on an annual basis.
Okay.
Each of you well, let me ask that question. How I know you appointed, the town council president appointed 3 and the council appointed 2 more. Who were appointed by the town council? But by the president.
Who did you nominate?
Cindy, Tom, and Tim.
All right. So, great.
We appointed Richard and Justin.
Okay, got it. So each of your appointments as an initial appointment, your appointments actually go through the end of 2027 from on a going forward basis, and they're done on an annual basis or until your successor is appointed. But because of a startup, a new redevelopment commission, those terms would be effective through the end of 2027. So you don't need to make new appointments next year. And then the first item would be, and then I can stop running your meeting, would be to elect officers. The officers you need to elect, elect a president and a vice president. Those cannot be appointed by the same body. So if you have council appointment as the president, then the council president appointment would need to be the vice president or vice versa. So that's the one kind of nuance that's relatively new. The secretary is also an appointed or an elected position. You do need to keep minutes. And then the treasurer is clerk by statute, and that's an ex officio position, so there's no voting, but that is by statute that the clerk serves as the treasurer. So you would need to elect a president and a vice president, vice president, and a secretary. And those would be annual elections.
So when you said the president, it may not be appointed as the vice president.
Yeah, so if you start with the president, then we can determine who's eligible to be vice president.
Okay, and then the ones that are on the town council, can they also be,
They can be.
okay, all right. That's what I was confused about.
I'd like to nominate Justin for president.
I'll second that. So you take it.
I'll take it.
All right, that was easy.
We need to make a motion on,
Yeah, make a motion
and then we need
second.
everybody. I've got a first and a
Yeah,
second.
Motion's a second been made. This call, are there any other nominations? Hearing none, then all in favor of Justin serving as president, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, and it's your meeting.
Is that congratulations or condolences?
We'll get back with you about your ass.
All right, now we need to elect a vice president. So the floor is open.
So, if I understand this right, since we have appointed you, neither one of us can be, right?
So, no, only Justin or Richard is the only ones who cannot be. Anybody else could be eligible to serve now. So, because the president was appointed Cindy and Tom and
Okay.
Tim.
and Tim. So Cindy, Tom, or Tim needs to be vice president.
You know that.
I'll be vice, anything, just as long as I'm not in charge.
Is that a nomination?
I'll nominate Cindy Spade as vice president.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and properly second on the floor to nominate Cindy Spade as vice president on the redevelopment commission. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Now, the floor is open to vote a secretary in.
Excuse me.
So does the secretary have to keep the minutes?
I mean, typically, yes, but oftentimes they can bribe the clerk.
Oh.
Can we bribe the clerk?
Let's see how much.
You need to find out which 3 pays the most.
There's something down here says confirmation, no compensation.
You know, guys, I'll do it, you know that, so, but we still need a
Yeah,
secretary,
you still need someone in that role.
even though I'll do the work for you. So we need a nomination for a secretary.
Sure. Tim, I nominate Tim.
I second.
There's been a motion and properly second on the floor to nominate Tim Richardson as the secretary of the redevelopment commission. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Welcome aboard.
Glad to be here.
So, yeah, but, I really feel good about this because I think we do have the opportunity to do some
Good.
good things for us. I don't
So
know.
we still need to get in touch with the school board member.
So I would suggest just reaching out to the school board president, informing them that the redevelopment commission had their initial meeting and advise them that they have the ability to nominate or suggest an appointment to the redevelopment commission. I'm just asking for that suggestion.
Who
Now,
are
is it required of them to do that?
The redevelopment commission actually makes the appointment. So typically you would ask them. It's going to be.
For a recommendation
For a
anyway?
recommendation. And then, obviously, if they're non-voting, they don't count towards quorum. They don't always attend, but the statute says that there shall be.
who's the Franklin Township representatives on the school board?
Casey Carmichael
So,
He's on,
and Lisa Thompson. Does that sound about right?
I think so.
But I don't know who the president of the school board is.
And they do not have to be a resident of the town. So, for example, superintendent, assistant superintendent, high school principal, whatever, they can serve even if they don't live in town.
Well, do one of you want to reach out to the school board president, or I can? It doesn't matter either or.
Doesn't matter, I will be in.
Tom's gonna reach out. And then I guess at the April meeting, we'll make that appointment after we get the recommendation.
So setting a schedule for future meeting dates, I think the council discussed that at the last council meeting, and we're gonna do it at 5:30 on the third Thursday. Is that correct?
Tuesday.
Or Tuesday, yeah, not Thursday.
Before the council meeting.
Yeah. So 5:30 PM, third Tuesday.
And so with that, you just have to post it once, obviously, and you don't have to post it unless you change again. And then you can always meet with 48 hours notice.
All right, and the next item on the agenda is confirmation of non-compensation.
Yeah,
So I
so
need a motion that nobody is going to accept any compensation for this
Yeah. the
position.
statute provides that if you are an elected official, you cannot, but the recommendation is that you go ahead and just pass it, make a motion and pass it. There will be no compensation paid to any member for their service on the redevelopment commission.
I'll make the motion that we confirm no compensation.
Second.
There's been a motion, properly second, that no compensation for the RDC. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. It looks like the next thing, consideration of adoption of rules, bylaws in accordance with Indiana Code 36-7-14-8G.
You have the ability to adopt rules and bylaws. Most do not. I just put it on here because we're trying to do all your organizational kind of efforts. Most just kind of operate by Robert's rules as far as how meetings run, and no special rules or adoption or bylaws. But I just included it there because it is an option that the redevelopment commission has.
Do we need a proper motion on that or just let?
So if there's a decision that you're not going to, I don't think you need to take any action.
I just say the Robert's rules.
Robert's rules, yeah.
Next item, ratification of professional services selection. I'm assuming that's you.
That's me. So I did bring an engagement agreement. Obviously, we've had some initial discussions. I've met with an executive session with the council a couple times. 2 points. One is, I work on an hourly basis for redevelopment commissions. When I'm working out of town, my deal has been that I only charge half of my travel time. So which is cutting the break. I think it's important to do that. My rate would be $3.15 an hour for this work, and I would lock that in. I would not raise that again until 2028, so I'd lock it in for a year and a half. And the only other point to raise would be, so there's a developer who has interest in doing work in the town. It's Joe Peacock. I have an existing attorney-client relationship with Joe, so I'm disclosing it on the record. If and when Joe ever did any work in town, we would execute a formal kind of conflict waiver at that point. The way I've worked in other communities, when I've had that happen, is I would represent the town. I would not represent the developer in that situation. So that's how we would navigate that moving forward. But just as a matter of clarity, to start out the relationship appropriately, I thought that was. And if I ever have a client who is coming in and interested in doing work, I'll disclose that to you. Or whether that's professional services, I do represent some engineering firms. So if there's somebody who had interest in doing it, I'll disclose it in advance of you taking any action.
Is there any requirements on your part? Do you like to be at all the meetings or just as required?
So I will beg off. My son is a senior, playing his last baseball season starts in 2 weeks, and so I will try to beg off being in person for April and May. But it's kind of up to you. I'm certainly happy to just correspond via email and kind of give you guidance on things as you need it. I can always call in and participate that way. That saves you paying me travel time. But I'm also happy to be here. So I will follow the will of the board on how to participate. So that's how I generally do it. I generally do participate in most meetings. I've done enough work. add a little value in addition to just legal services. So I generally do participate in most meetings.
Well, I don't see us having much meat in April and May, so by the time we're ready to get nitty-gritty, you'll be ready. So, we need a motion to ratify his. Okay, I'll make a motion to ratify his professional service agreement.
Second.
There's been a motion and properly second to hire Russell Brown, professional services for the RDC attorney. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Welcome aboard.
Before we leave tonight, I'll use sign my engagement agreement.
All right, next item of business, review and overview of annual obligations of the RDC. I'll
So-
let you-
Yeah, so I just, there are a variety of regular reports that you have to file, especially once you have a TIF district established. Some of these other ones probably aren't, you won't have to work on until you have a TIF established. But you do have an annual report, we call it the April 15th report. Essentially, that just kind of lays out spending the redevelopment commission has incurred in the previous year. So you won't have one for 2025. So your first one would be due next April 15th. The others are the excess AV determination and the neutralization report. Those are, you do not have to do those unless and until you have a TIF district established. The excess AV determination essentially says that you give notice to all overlapping taxing districts that you are keeping all of your TIF revenue because you have projects, you have expenditures that are necessary. Their neutralization report is actually done by a fiscal analyst or fiscal advisor that lays out how much increment has occurred in the TIF district that you should be capturing in the next year. So would hire someone like Baker Tilly or Crow or whatever Crone or someone like that would be providing that service for you. You have an annual spending plan. This is the third year for that. The legislature created that a couple years ago. Essentially, we have to lay out and file with the DLGF how you intend to spend revenue in the upcoming year. It's roughly a budget, but it doesn't have to go through an informal approval process unless and until you have allocated dollars or grant dollars. That is not as formal or not as stringent a process.
So we don't need to do anything with that at this moment because we don't have a budget.
Correct. Yeah, we'll work on it as you kind of marshal resources for the next year, and that's not due until 12/31 anyway, as well. And then you have an annual presentation that has 3 categories. Again, that doesn't kick in until you have a TIF in place. So really the only ones that you'll be obligated for in the near future will be the annual report for next. That'll be the next one we'll have to do. We'll have to work on an annual spending plan at the end of the year and then an annual report. But I'll assist on those as needed and just remind you of when they're due and kind of help you through that process.
So if I heard you correctly, the annual report's not due until April 15th of 27.
Correct. And it has to be presented to the town council as well. As an obligation of you have to adopt it, file the DLGF and present it to the town council. So we generally will try to, my cadence on that is we'll work on that in February, March, and have it approved at your March meeting so that it's ready for presentation to the council. So.
All right. Any questions before we move on any of that?
Sure.
No. Discussion of steps necessary to establish economic development area.
So this is, I kind of walked through this step with the council members in previous discussions, but that's your first step. It would be your first step as redevelopment commission is doing 2 things. One is creating your economic development area, which I presume is going to be the entirety of town. And the second will be adopting an economic development plan. And so economic development plan is not a 50-page huge document. It generally, the communities I've assisted with, we've done 5 to 7 page kind of documents, lay out what are the biggest needs in the community, how you anticipate addressing those, and what role the redevelopment commission might play. So lack of commercial development, if that's the biggest, or lack of new multifamily development, or whatever you look at as those big overarching issues, those would be your goals. We would lay those out as the goals for the redevelopment commission. We would include in their strategies, whether that's leveraging existing town-owned properties, whether that's leveraging economic development opportunities, abatement, whatever strategies we kind of work through. But I need you guys to kind of identify what you think those, and I would say 3 to 5 goals or challenges would probably be what I would suggest. I know you had a relatively recent comprehensive plan that was completed. That would be that's a helpful tool to go back and say, hey, these are land use map changes we think need to, or development could occur, or the comp plan called out for mixed use development, infill development, whatever type of development strategies identified in the comp plan. The text of the comp plan would be helpful too. That could guide some of those tools. So if someone has a copy of that, they can share with me. I'm happy to look at that and come up with some suggestions. So the guts of it are, I need your help on. I can draft it. I can help you wordsmith it. But those 3 to 5 kind of, what are the big picture things that we hope to accomplish in somewhat near term, 3 to 5 years would be what I tell you to look out at. The other things to identify in that are if there are properties that the town would need to acquire in order to accomplish those goals. So, hey, if we accomplished this parcel or these group of parcels here, and we could accomplish this big overarching goal. Whether you have a funding stream mechanism in mind, or whether it's just aspirational a little bit. And the reason you identify it is because the RDC cannot acquire a property for the rest of the economic development plan without it being identified in the plan. So if we don't identify it now, we just have to come back later and modify the plan, which has some steps in it. And so that'd be the other thing I'd ask you to keep in mind. Hey, I know if we could acquire the old hotel that Tom's talked about, or whatever it is, that might be something we put in there, and that would be a goal for a town center.
So it sounds like to me, it's better to shoot for the moon on properties that we want to acquire and put it in this plan than have them to come back and identify them at a later time.
Yeah, it certainly is beneficial if you have an idea that what you could use it for. Don't just say, well, we're going to acquire 5 residential properties down there. We don't know what we're going to do with them. But hey, our goals are to create economic development at Maine and Maine. And that would be, be accomplished by acquiring these parcels to package them as a redevelopment.
This is stuff that we don't own, but it's something like a vision I might have.
Kind of like when we were, part of the, what was that?
Comprehensive plan.
Yeah, like when we were talking about some of that farmland south there. I mean, looking at that as where we could expand or whatever. That would be the kind of thing we want to put in the plan.
Yeah, some aspirational goals.
Okay.
And they should tie back to one of your bigger goals. So if, again, I'm talking on the fly, but to create a town center, a town economic center. And, to do that, here's some strategies, and we would need to acquire these parcels to further that goal. So that would be how I would encourage you to tie them in. Or we're going to promote infill residential development. And to do that, we would want to acquire these parcels which are vacant or which have rundown housing on them. Or, so those types of, that would be the way to go about, strategizing. Because remember, though, this is a public document, And if somebody's gonna get upset about seeing their parcel that you don't own on a list, just be mindful of that.
Also makes the price go up.
It could, it could, yeah, I mean, so there are unintended consequences to you know, pointing that out, because it is a public document. So those are kind of the contents. There are some statutory criteria that you gotta kind of lay out and meet in there, which we'll make sure we do. But once we have a draft that you're comfortable with, you would approve it. That's step one. Then it has to go to the plan commissioner, whoever serves as your plan commission. And all the plan commission is doing is to state that the contents of the economic development plan do not interfere with the comprehensive plan. Obviously, relatively recently updated comprehensive plan, so we shouldn't be in a situation where anything we lay out in the economic development plan will negatively impact the comp
The
plan.
planning commission, would that be their economic, or their strategic plan or ours?
It's yours, it's your comprehensive, because the comp plan is, you know, adopted for your community, and that's what they're reviewing it against, is what does your comprehensive plan say for town? And the economic development plan doesn't interfere with that in any negative way. That's a recommendation, or that's a kind of an approval. The town council also has to approve it. Hopefully, if we get approved here, we're also going to get approved at the town council. But essentially, you got to go through that process. It then comes back to the redevelopment commission for a public hearing, and so that's got to be a noticed, advertised public hearing. It's got a confirmatory. Then we do what we call confirmatory resolution. So you say, hey, we have this economic development plan. You have comments, feedback on it. Come talk to us, and then you have the ability, following any public testimony, if you get any, to make modifications to the plan based on that public testimony. If you get no public testimony, everybody says this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. You just adopt it at that point. And then we will ultimately file, I record them, because I think that's a helpful way. I record them, we give copies to the DLGF and to the county. That is the same basic process that you'll utilize to create an allocation area. So if and when you have a TIFable project, so we're talking about potentially a convenience store, that might be, we might want a TIF to capture that increment. That is essentially, it goes through that same exact process to create an allocation area. Technically it's a modification to your economic development plan, and you kind of go through those same steps here. Planning commission, council, back here, and then you give notice of that to DLGF and to county so that they know to capture that increment, to that creates its own kind of allocation area, its own taxing district. Essentially, it's treated a little bit different. The ads work for you when you come in and get the distribution, because we know that, hey, that's the development commission money. It comes in with its own taxing district identification on it. So that the only add there is that you have to do a fiscal impact study as well. So that essentially that is an expense. But again, someone like Crow, Baker Tilly, Philadelphia Prone.
And that falls under where?
That is kind of, that would be under D.
So there's a physical
There's
impact.
fiscal,
Fiscal.
yes. Economic impact study. The only other thing we have to do then is we have to deliver a copy of that economic impact study to the overlapping taxing districts. So that's library board, township, schools, that you're considering it. And you have to do that in advance of your adoption hearing. So generally the FA financial advisor, fiscal advisor delivers that, send it via certified mail so we get proof everybody has it. And technically during the 10 days while it's under consideration, no permits are supposed to be issued in the allocation area either. But that's the one just difference. You just have this process that happens, and so we'll generally try to tie that down pretty tight so that there's no wasted time in that situation. start to finish, minimum kind of 45 days, 45 to 60 days to get all that steps done.
But I'm correct when we talked the first time. As long as we get our tip established this year, anything, so if he starts building in August, we can still.
It's effective January 1st. That you're effective January 1st, and you get any increment that's created effective. So if this was your base year, then any increment that's created in any subsequent year, it comes into the TIF. It just has to be completed. Yes, it has to be completed by year end, and I have completed them in late December in order to make sure that you capture that increment.
But we did tell you we want to look at that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's that from a timing perspective, that's what you have to do is complete it by that time.
So you are working on the TIF, or we need to
You got
vote on you?
you got to create your economic development plan as
Okay,
step number
okay,
one. So-
Okay,
so
that's
then-
what this is, okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. You can go through the process effectively twice,
Okay.
unless we're ready to TIF, unless we know we're going to TIF, you want to go ahead and expend funds to get the economic impact statement. I mean, you can do it once if we know that that's an allocation area we're going to want to create. If he's far enough along to say, yeah, this is a real project, we might as well just do it one time and create your economic development area being all of town, and then we'll have our standalone or an initial allocation area.
He's got his state approved architectural drawings, he's got his financing, he just needs to road cut, so. Let's wait,
So we're on the
next
last
month, we ought to be able to.
Yeah, so I mean, I think from that perspective, it's probably worth just doing it once for this initial pass, because then we don't have to come back and, do a second public
And we need
hearing.
to touch base with Joe and see what his time frame is.
I have one question. It's a little bit different. It might be a dumb question, but we created a TIF for the town. But what about land, like, we talked about, we don't own? Is that something that we were to own it eventually? Do we have to go back and re-TIF that?
No, so we're creating an economic, so two different areas here. Economic development area is kind of the overarching area within which you can spend TIF dollars. So the economic development area, from my perspective, should be a little bit larger than your allocation area. The allocation area is your TIF district. That's another name for it. So if we have an allocation, we have an economic development area that's this big, we'll have one small little allocation area. Well, any TIF generated here can be spent within the entire economic development area. So that's why you create a larger economic development area. You don't want to TIF the entire town because then you have negative growth that can offset that positive growth. So if I have a positive commercial growth of $1 million, but I got 5 properties who each lost $50,000 in AV, well, I don't have $1 million of growth anymore. I only got $750,000 because that negative growth offsets my positive growth. And I just had a client where we actually kicked some properties out of the TIF district because they were dragging down the value. It'll result in my client receiving about $75,000 more in property taxes in subsequent years because we kicked out these low-performing properties that were dragging the overall
So
value
we'd be
down.
better off to say, okay, this block here, and this block here, and this block here.
Correct. For your allocation areas.
Right.
But your economic development area should be all of town. The only real restriction on that use is for residential TIFs, which is the last point here. So residential TIFs are how you create increment or obtain increment from single family development, single family or duplexes. Anything that's less than 4 units is considered kind of single family for that purpose. And so the way that you capture increment from them is by doing a residential TIF versus a kind of a typical, what I would call typical commercial TIF. And the restrictions are there that the expenditures of residential TIF dollars have to benefit the allocation area. It's pretty broad, but I've interpreted that to be, okay, sidewalks that lead you from downtown to that allocation area, I think that benefits that. But if I'm doing sidewalks over here and the residential tip is over here, that probably doesn't benefit it. So that's the one difference versus a kind of a typical commercial TIF, that you can expend funds anywhere in the economic development area. Residential TIF, you can only kind of benefit that TIF area. The other challenge there is, statute, assuming the legislature doesn't continue this, but you have to get the approval of the school corporation for, or you have to consult with the school corporation for residential TIFs. You have to hold a neighborhood meeting. So there's some additional hoops that you have to jump through, and they're generally shorter in length.
Okay, so that raises a question. So we have to have the school board's permission for apartments?
No, that's not only for residential.
But there is a gentleman that's interested in this lot down here for a duplex, so.
Yeah, so that could be a reason to, perhaps do a residential TIF. Then you gotta do the cost benefit analysis. If I'm getting one new home or two new homes, I gotta spend some professional fees to get that as an allocation area. Is that worth it? Is that worth it? And the other thing that you have to make a real choice about is, does every new development in town need to be in an economic development area? Because in a TIF area, an allocation area, because that, as a reminder, that increment only comes to you. It doesn't flow through to the rest of town. So if, or the rest of overlapping taxing districts. So you might be, cutting your nose off to spite your face a little bit there. If all of the economic development is occurring only in redevelopment areas or in allocation areas, how does the rest of town benefit from that? Or do you only kind of capture the biggest ones and let other kind of, maybe they added a garage over there, I don't need to capture that. Or, we had an empty lot that had a duplex on it, we let that kind of flow through to normal channels. But that's a policy choice. And some communities say every single thing is gonna be in an allocation area because redevelopment commission needs those dollars and it can attract more business by utilizing those dollars. And some say, hey, we're gonna strategically locate our allocation areas so we capture the biggest projects, but not every project.
And we should capture that for what, 25 years?
Yeah, from the time your debt starts associated with it, so yes.
But if it's like the apartment complex, that's too big to be under the residential. That would be under the business, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But if we could get somebody that would build a house down here,
Yeah,
and maybe if we could acquire Joe's lot, they could level that and build a house there.
yeah.
Typical clients that you work with, do they do many residential TIF areas?
I think the very first one in the state, I did, in Knightstown. It is a 24 unit development, so it's typically larger. I've done one in Union City, I helped them create one. And that was a city-owned piece of property where they were utilizing the residential TIF as a way to put the infrastructure in. So they were financing the infrastructure for, I think that was a 75 or 100, home development. So it's not typically like one-offs. It would typically, hey, we got a block here. We can add 8 new homes or 10 new homes in this area. But we need some dollars to put in storm sewers, electric, streets.
More so like a housing development, say like Greenfield's getting. It goes back to the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
We identified a couple of places out here south of town that maybe we could attract 15, 10 houses, whatever would fit in that. That would make sense, but the onesie twosies
are
I
hard.
mean, the town's already going to get electric and water on that stuff. This is my thought.
Yeah, that's a policy choice, and I think it's one you just start thinking through. When would we want to use a residential TIF? I would suggest it should be a block of a block, 8, 10, 15, kind of, in close proximity. And that they need something. They need something to make it go. They need utility assistance, infrastructure assistance. They need sidewalk repair improvements, their street widening. I mean, things that you can pay for more directly with residential TIF, but that you can keep all those dollars here. So they've got a street project that's going to benefit these 10 homes. We might not be able to otherwise pay for it. Well, here we can utilize residential TIF to finance that and pay that back over a period of time.
So do you suggest not putting TIF on the whole town then?
Correct.
Okay.
I think you need to be very strategic where you put allocation areas. So if we get a curb cut, MnDOT comes to their senses and gives you a curb cut for a new convenience store, I think that's a great location. The other benefit of that is, I think if I understand where the location is and where Joe had an interest in potentially doing multifamily, that's all contiguous to each other, and that can all be in one single allocation area, and we can do it at one time if there's a really strong interest in that. So that makes sense to do it there, and then if something comes on the other end of town, and at a later date somebody comes in and says that's great, we're going to do something downtown, like those opportunities come along, and then we take advantage of them when they come along.
So that's when we would TIF that area, when we know something's coming. Okay, thank you. Because I was thinking, what about the future? But you're saying we can add to TIF.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you just have to go through the process that kind of
What we-
9B and C, that kind of
Thank
process
you. Yeah.
would be required anytime you create an allocation area.
Okay.
So there are the one disadvantage is there are professional fees associated with modifying that. That's a new act. And I'm the cheap part of that. The financial advisor is the more expensive part of that. So they're going to be the ones that create the economic impact statement. That's a more costly effort. And so you want to try to be strategic about when you do that. The other advantage I've seen is when, hey, we know this is going to happen, we're going to create an allocation area and we're going to issue debt. You can have the same financial advisor kind of play all those roles, and you can pay them out of your cost of issuance. So that's what I've seen. If and when you ever were going to issue debt for a project, that would be the way to do it. You kind of wrap it all into one thing.
Clear, Bob?
Yeah, pretty much. So you keep saying allocate money and stuff. So like, we don't have any TIF money or anything right now. So out of my general fund, where do I pay you or anything else that we're getting ready to do for this?
So that would be a professional services budget. I would assume you have a general professional services budget. The redevelopment commissions do have, and I don't represent one that does this, but redevelopment commissions do have an opportunity to levy, to have an additional levy. Generally, we don't do it because and everybody's capped out anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, most people are
Oh, yeah.
most residents are at the 1% cap, and so you aren't you aren't adding new money to the flow. You're just reallocating the dollars a little bit. So, I mean, I can tell you how Knightstown does it. Knightstown, the town council, and the redevelopment commission have an MOU essentially that says that the redevelopment commission won't seek to levy that, and in exchange, the town council gives them what they would otherwise be entitled to levy. So that's how they've operated over the years. It's essentially about 3 cents per $100 of AV is what the redevelopment commission could levy itself for its own benefit. And so the town council and the redevelopment commission have an MOU that essentially they just get their 3 cents out of 100 AV.
Okay.
That's just an example of how
Yeah.
another community has done it.
Mhm.
You can certainly allocate those dollars, and then there was some discussion about donation at one point to cover some of your startup fees. And so I think, if somebody donated money and that's been done in other communities, to help get those costs going.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up and figure out how to do it, but, because the TIF would be our expense, but the establishment of the commission, we were gonna accept some donations for that, so there would be, and I was gonna suggest to the town board that maybe we give them some money out of our rainy day fund or something, so they could operate for a while until we brought in some revenue, but we have to do that at a town board meeting, but we could give you stipends to get started on, so.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously you have your expenses of bonding, that's an obligation you have, and then, professional fees. And who has done work? Have you guys done a rate study or had anybody else do?
I think you're changing, right?
Yeah, we're changing who did the rate study,
Okay.
so we're not using that company anymore.
Who are you, do you?
We haven't talked about it, but we need to because we're due for one. So that's something the council, we need to look into. Who do you want to do the rate study? Crone, is that one of them? Or
Well, Buzz Chrome,
Buzz Crone,
Baker Tilly,
Baker Tilly.
Who did you use?
Steve Brock.
Yeah, so my suggestion is if there's gonna be a rate study done, that would be a great thing to have a discussion with them about, hey, we're gonna need potentially an economic impact study done for a new allocation area. See what kind of dollars, you might get a little bit of a package deal from somebody who's going to do more work out here.
We kind of thought that might work on the other one, didn't we?
So that's certainly, some communities have had success doing that.
So on this economic development plan, since you've been attorney for other towns or cities, can you share some, because this is public document, can you share a few with this commission here so we can just kind of review? I mean, I think we have identified some areas through the comprehensive plan and discussion of certain areas that we would like to invest in, but it would be nice to lay our eyes on. Since this is brand new to everybody, do our due diligence, and a little bit of research. That's my opinion.
I can share a couple that I've done. I can share a couple that I've seen that I pulled from other sources too, so I can share those. Again, it's not a 50-page document. I don't put a lot of slick photos in it. It is text and a map and some timelines. That's kind of what you got. That's all you need to get going. So I can do that, and then somebody could just create an email string that I could have everybody's email. That would be great. And that way I can communicate.
I'll do it for you. Okay.
All right, next item on the agenda is creation of action plan to develop an economic development plan.
So we just did.
Yep, so, is there anything else that comes before this commission? Questions? Confusion?
Just kind of a lot to,
Well, and I think too, with getting some examples of these economic development plans from other cities and towns, maybe we'll digest it a little bit more.
So what is your plan? What do we need to do for April's meeting? What do you want prepared? I mean, because if I need to do an agenda for that, I'd like to know what we have in mind.
I think as the commission, we need to at least start identifying some areas in town. I mean, like Russell said, on the whole TIF area, I think it behooves the town if we're strategic about picking those areas instead of TIFing the whole town. So I think those are probably things that we need to do. I mean, these meetings don't have to be extremely long until we actually get some kind of plan developed, in my opinion.
And then I was also thinking if they do start getting long and run into our regular meeting, we may have to decide, to plan an evening that's just for this. It just depends, I guess. I don't
As
know
a
if an
president,
hour.
I'm going to try to keep them as like.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should go get through anything.
So,
I mean,
Is that the main thing then you want us to do before the next meeting is the TIF?
I'll circulate examples for you guys.
Okay.
I can tell you that I will, unless there's rain, I will likely try to call in for the next meeting. I will
Sure.
likely not be here. But, yeah, we'll be at North Central. So, but I think even if at your next meeting, you were able to say, hey, these are the three, we think that these are the 3 to 5 goals we have, and you can have some consensus on that. I would say that's a big step forward from you. And yeah, that would be what I would.
Okay.
And so I would say the typical agenda in most is approval of minutes, payment of claims, old business, new business. And I would just I would keep it in that kind of typical format.
Just like a regular.
Just like a regular meeting, and I would just slide things where they're at. And then when you'd have a public hearing, we can put that under new business and you can.
I just want to make sure we're moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
just stay here and then come,
Stagnant.
yeah, and say, April, well, I didn't do
So,
anything.
at the last council meeting, town board meeting, there was a presentation about our comprehensive development, right? Do we have, I wasn't there, so do we
Yes.
have, I think it'd be good for everybody to make
I
sure
have
to have that.
copies. I have copies. They didn't make enough for everybody, but I have copies because I knew you would want one.
Did he send that in PDF form or no?
Yeah,
I cannot remember. Did he
I don't
really
know.
do
It's
that?
it's on our email. It's on the computer.
Okay.
I think that's why he didn't print out everything for
Yeah.
everybody because it's real
Yeah,
thick.
If you got an email, you just email it.
Yeah, just email it.
I think he did, but I'll re-email it.
I don't know that I got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll leave it.
he did email it to the comprehensive
It's
plan,
plan.
but Richard and Tim probably didn't get it because they
Yeah.
weren't on that.
Can you send it to me?
Uh-huh.
The
And then you're gonna
town-
send
the town
us
email?
some examples.
Yeah. And I'll send it to you guys too.
Stuff gets lost in my regular email.
And just for clarification, this commission still operates on the open door law with 5 of us. 2 of us can meet on site without having all that stuff.
Yeah, the challenge becomes if it's 2 town council members who meet, right? Someone might argue that you're meeting in your role as town council members and not as redevelopment commission. So I would encourage you to think of that before you do.
Kind of split it up a little bit.
Yes.
So when you always have to be here,
Yeah, and
otherwise there's no meeting.
and the other thing too is you are eligible to do executive sessions. So if and when you're looking to acquire property, you have litigation, all those things, you can meet under the same open door law exceptions for executive session that any other body can. And your communications are, disclosable as public records. So just be mindful of that.
So let me ask you this, say if we 5 want to meet and look at some properties, that can be a normal meeting. Do we have to disclose, we start here, but if we start going around the town and looking at things, can we do that as a special meeting and identify in the notes when Jana posted that, hey, we're gonna start here in the office, but we as a group, a commission is gonna kind of scour the town to identify?
Yeah, I've actually argued that you could do that in executive session because it's consideration of
Purchase.
purchase of real
I'm
estate.
sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, that's
Yeah.
exactly how I would
That's
think
what I
about it. It also can be, for example, I sit on, I'll give you all my background, but I sit on the Fort Harris Land Use Authority Board in Lawrence, where I live. We have toured properties. We essentially consider it as a tour of a property. We would consider that to be almost a social gathering. Somebody's built something and we show up and take a tour of it.
Yeah.
I would consider that to be social.
I know within the
social
state
gathering.
statutes, there's some.
Yeah, so, but absolutely, if you are saying, hey, we are, as a commission, are gonna drive town and look at available properties, I think you could meet an executive session. You just need to post it, as an executive session, in that way.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Get Russell on the road at 6:30.
Yeah, you are.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So
I'll make a
moved.
motion.
I second.
There's been a motion, probably second, to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Turn off the camera.
All right.
Let me get this mute.
Yes.
Hang on.